Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to kind of go into like a little bit more into the weeds about how you do it, what you should set up, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Okay, so these are kind of like topics we're going to go over. Facebook, one of the things that's overlooked all the time is organization and repetition. Those two things are extremely important with Facebook. You definitely want to have organization in your naming conventions, audiences, remarketing funnels, all that sort of stuff. So we'll go into that. We'll do some optimization stuff. How to write compelling ads, what makes people click, why is it important to put a lot of time into your ads, write 3 or 4 variations, test them, and then go with the best one. Obviously how to find converting audiences, and then picking winners, and I'll give you a bit of homework too at the end. So starting from the top, the way you kind of want to look at Facebook is you've got these 3 buckets. So buckets work in the first one being the hottest audience. So these guys are going to be your lowest acquired customers. So they know about your brand. They're just pretty much doing a price comparison shop. So you can really double down on these guys. This will include stuff like website remarketing. So you should be setting up stuff like people who visited your store in the last 30 days, people who added stuff to their cart but then didn't check out, a few other remarketing. So for example, if you have, say, a video on Facebook, you can now create audiences based on 50% of the people who watch that video, for example. So that's going to be a much more qualified audience that will class as remarketing. And Facebook loves that because they essentially want to keep all their users on Facebook. So being able to use Facebook remarketing is another great way to get lower CPAs, and using your other buckets, which I'm going to go through in a second, to just attract people into those audiences. It's kind of like a funnel. You want to expand the top to expand the bottom. Another way is Instagram. So Facebook just released the option to create audiences to remarket people who visit your Instagram account. So Instagram was a little bit of a black box, and you couldn't really remarket any of that stuff because there wasn't much click options organically. But now you can definitely retarget all those people who engage with your Instagram page. The other thing is, if you have an email list, you can definitely start creating remarketing audiences based on emails. So if you're using a service like Klaviyo or something, you can then create segments in Klaviyo and then retarget people who open emails but don't click, or retarget people who open an email, click, but then don't purchase. And so these are all kind of like the remarketing audiences that you can create that are super relevant, because the messaging you can pretty much hit on point because you know exactly who the audience is and you know that they're just about to buy pretty much. So that's the first bucket I want you guys to create if you were going to set up your Facebook account, because that's going to be your highest ROI. The next bucket is warm. So this is all of your data-driven audiences. So this is stuff like the lookalike audiences when you upload a list. So as Henry was talking about, you upload your list of emails, your top LTV customers, all that fun stuff. And the second part is, to these audiences, pixel data. So obviously you put a pixel on your website. That pixel then passes all the information back to Facebook, and you can create audiences based on that, which then you want to create lookalikes from. So these are data-driven audiences, and you have a much higher chance of converting these guys than you do someone who you're just prospecting from interest and behavior targeting. And the last part is lookalikes based off engagement. So say you have a ton of people engaging on a post, you want to create a lookalike audience from those engaged users, so that you can then go and find more people like that. So the way that lookalike audiences work is that you put in a seed data set. Facebook's like, okay, great, thanks for that information. They then say, which country do you want to find similar customers or people in? So say I say America. So then Facebook will take that information and find 1% of America that is most alike those people. So that's kind of how lookalikes work, and they obviously go from 1% to 10%. So you always want to start at that 1%, because that's obviously going to be your most targeted and most aligned people. And then you can work your way out, all the way up to the 10%. And then your last one is kind of like your cold bucket. So this is stuff that you want to create personas around. And so this isn't data driven, this is almost just like guessing. But hopefully it's an educated guess, because you're collecting information about your customer, you know, who they are, what they do, what websites they like, which email lists they sign up to, all that sort of stuff. So those are the 3 buckets that you want to set up in your Facebook account. definitely starting with hot, then moving down to warm, then cold. That'll give you the best chance of getting a profitable campaign running, so that it will give you, like, the hot audience will give you much more kind of like leeway in your budget to then expand and experiment in that warm and cold bucket. So definitely start with your remarketing. Okay, so a few kind of like pointers when you're starting a campaign. What you want to do is you want to start like testing a few different things, because you're obviously not going to get it right the first time. So you're not going to be like, okay, my customers love Pixar, I'm just going to target Pixar and that's it. I'm assuming they're going to be the best. What you want to do is you want to find Pixar and say 3 or 4 other companies, set them all up as ad sets, and then test $5 a day to each one of those. Let it run for 3 or 4 days, see which one's got the best results so far, and then go with that and then scale up. So I really suggest that you guys start with a lower budget and then work up once you see what's working. The other thing is, people buy at different times during the week. So if you're like, okay, I've got $100, I want to spend it over the next 2 days, and say you do that on a Saturday and Sunday, and the campaign bombs, you might be like, damn, it doesn't work. But that might be because everybody purchases on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So you want to start at a lower budget and run it for at least that 7-day period, so that you get that full spectrum of the week to try and capture those people and get a better data set. The other thing is, obviously, when you're creating your campaign, Facebook will ask you for all the demo, geo, and all the information converting audience type. So if you've got Google Analytics installed on your website, you can usually get your where they live, even down to the state, and also what gender they are. So you would start off all of your prospecting campaigns with, you know, we know that 25 to 35 convert the best. People who live in California and Texas, males. So that's who you would start testing with, and then as you start seeing results, you would expand that out. So you want to target the highest converting guys first. The next, I suppose, tip when you guys are creating campaigns is always separate out your remarketing from your prospecting. So any of your prospecting campaigns should always exclude any of your remarketing audiences. So for example, if you're setting up a lookalike audience, always exclude your website visitors 180 days. Always exclude people who engage with your Facebook page 365 days. Because that way you can get much more, you can get less lapse or crossover between those audiences and campaigns, which is going to help you in the long run in finding out what works and what doesn't. The last thing is you kind of leaning on the finding your perfect highest converting audience first. Start by just going in the newsfeed, Wi-Fi only. Because the reason you want to do this is that the newsfeed is a little bit more expensive, but it's always the most, I suppose, attractive placement on Facebook. So you've got the highest chance of someone engaging with your ad in the newsfeed. The reason that I say make sure that you're only using targeting Wi-Fi first is because people are less distracted when they're on Wi-Fi. So they're at home, they're at the office, they're not like commuting on a bus or doing something else at the same time. So if you go with the Wi-Fi only to start with, you're going to have a much higher chance of getting someone to complete an action that you're asking them to do. Also with bid settings, just start off with auto, don't overcomplicate it. Like as you start running campaigns and getting a little bit more data, then you can swap over and start getting a little bit more adventurous with manual bidding. But manual bidding costs a lot of money to get right and find the exact tipping point where you're paying the right amount to get the right volume at the right cost. So just start with auto bid. If anything and you're too scared to start with auto bid, go with a manual CPC. But yeah, don't worry about doing, yep.
Do you find that those same rules apply for all of the 3 buckets? So like even in the cold one where you're just kind of spreading awareness, the same thing, start low.
Yeah.
You're still able to like gather that data enough to work.
Yeah. So it'll like your KPIs will change depending on the bucket. So for example, remarketing, your KPI would be conversions. But if you're doing a prospecting campaign, your KPI might be like cost per click because you're just trying to widen your funnel and get people to the website.
Right.
So yeah, it'll definitely change, but start off with this because it will make it a lot easier. And as you find what works for your company and your content and your audience, you can slowly adjust that and you'll be like, okay, actually, it's not 25 to 35 that are my best converting audience, it's actually 35 to 45. And you can slowly adjust that as you kind of find that information. And you know, over time, your account gets much more data that you can use to optimize your ads. Okay, so now we're going to go into like how to write a good ad. So we know we've got the buckets, we kind of know like a few tips on how we can set up our campaign, but now we've got to actually create the ad. So you've really got to ask yourself a few questions, and you've got to really spend some time creating a good ad, because one good ad you can pretty much run for months. So I remember a few companies that I've worked with, we've created like a video that's done really well, and we've been running that for 12 months. We've run over $1.5 million to a single ad. So it's definitely worth spending that time to just create a really good ad, as opposed to being like, it's fine, I'm just going to chuck this up and be okay. So really spend time to question like, who am I targeting? Make sure that's aligned in the copy, the image, and the landing page if possible. What problem are they trying to solve? And also, how are you going to solve it for them? And that's kind of like the basic structure that you want to start with, because essentially people just want you to solve problems for them, and usually it's in the fact of saving them time or money. So that's a great place to start when you're trying to write your ad. So a few tips on how to improve your copywriting. So people just love emojis for some reason. So if you ever want to break up your content a little bit, you can see in the example, it becomes a little bit more easy to read when you chuck emojis in there, because it kind of breaks up the slabs of text that you're putting in there. So definitely try and include emojis. So for example, using an arrow to a link, a hand pointing arrow. It's a really small thing, but it draws your attention to that link, and you're like, okay, I didn't even read the copy, I'm just going to click on this thing. The other thing is, Facebook definitely gets hard to read because they don't really put spacing in between your sentences very well. So make sure you're starting a new paragraph every 1 to 2 sentences so that people can consume it very easily. People are very lazy, so you've got to really go to the effort of making it as easy as possible to consume your content. If you can, call out the person that you're targeting. So you're like, hey, people of Austin, do you love tacos? Get $5 off my taco truck. So call them out, try and make it specific. Other thing is, you can get even more targeted by calling out the pain point. Hey, people of Austin, are you hungry? And do you like tacos? I've got the perfect solution for you. Here's $5 off a taco, come buy it.
And then you can retarget them with, are you still hungry?
Yeah, exactly, there you go. Someone, freelancer, go out and find some taco trucks to do that too. The other thing is you can use a bit of scarcity. So people really, nobody likes making decisions. So if you add like, hey, this offer's only available for the next 50 people, even if it's not, it's a little bit of a grey area, but even if it's not, you want to create that scarcity, whether it's a time or a limited number. So for example, someone who's really good at this, like SumoCon for example, we said, okay, 15 seats left, or 15 tickets left, and all of a sudden you're like, damn, I've got to get my ticket before they run out. Whereas if we were just running an ad that was like, hey, Sumo tickets, buy them, you're like, okay, I can do that next week. The conference is a month away. So try and add some scarcity to your ads, and that will definitely help. Okay, next section. Now,
how do you know where to get emojis? Like, where do you go to actually get the copy or the code or whatever?
So if you're actually on a Mac, this changed my life. You can press down Control Command Spacebar, and that will actually pull up the library of emojis you can just pick and choose from. Or you can Google it and you can just copy and paste it. But yeah, I like using the command control space because it's just easy, and while you're doing it, you can quickly insert one. Okay, so now we've got the buckets, we've got the ads, now we need to go to the targeting. So how are you going to find these people? So there's a few ways you can find converting audiences, especially with all the information that Facebook has. They do an extremely good job at collecting information from all of their users and then turning it against them so that advertisers can serve ads to them. So what you want to start off with the Google Insights. If you have a large enough page, go into your audience insights, plug your page in there, and it will show you all of the information about your followers, their ages, what they like, other pages they like, all that sort of stuff. So all of this, if you're starting prospecting, straight away just find the most common traits of your followers and start by targeting those things, because they obviously are interested in that, or in general, your customers are generally interested in that. The other thing is obviously the pixel data. That will also help you, give you some information. The other thing you can do in Audience Insights is not just for your page, you can chuck in uploaded email lists. So Facebook will then match all of those emails to their Facebook profiles, and then you can get all of that information on your email list. Same with your lookalike audiences. If you've got a really good lookalike audience that's converting great, chuck it into Audience Insights and see what all of the common traits are, and you can then go and use that information in your prospecting to go and find more people like that. The other thing you want to do when trying to find really good audiences is talk to your customers. Like, those guys are the ones that know what they want. all you have to do is ask them. Most of the time they're very happy to give you that information. Whether you put that in a follow-up survey or something, so after you purchase, you say, hey, thank you so much for purchasing, to get $10 off your next deal, or get $10 off your next purchase, just fill out this 30-second survey. And just change out the questions every few weeks or every few months, depending on how many customers you get, and you'll generally build up a database of a ton of information on your exact target person you want to find on Facebook. And that will help you again moving forward, creating new ads and new campaigns, because you get more knowledgeable about your customer as you progress. The other thing is that a lot of people don't do is just read the comments in your Facebook ads and posts. Like, there's a goldmine of stuff in there. People sharing their opinion, people saying what they don't like, what they do like, all that sort of stuff. So if you've got a lot of engagement on your ads or even your organic posts, just spend half an hour, read through all the comments on there, and you'll probably learn a lot about your company that you didn't actually realize. So how we use Audience Insights. So in the top left, there's a drop down with a ton of stuff, and there will just be one called Audience Insights. The dashboard here on the left, those are all the options for creating your audience. So the first option for the top section where it says custom audiences, that's where you can choose from all of your lookalike audiences, all of your pixel audiences, and all that sort of stuff. So that's how you do that. The other thing down the bottom there, where it says pages, you could just choose your page there and find out all the information about that. This is on the printout, so you can use it. And I think we're also going to send out the slides, so you can go through that process as well. And then we're short on time.
Can put your page in there too, right?
Sorry?
Your competitors can put your page in there too?
Unfortunately, yes.
if you're big enough. So
Yeah.
like if you're Nike or Adidas, and then that's sort of I think that you can put it in there, but if it's too small, like I forgot what the size is. It's dynamic. It's like 250,000 likes or followers on a page, and then or maybe more than that sometimes, depending on how niche you are. But yeah, they try to protect you as long as you can. As long as you can.
Yeah, but you could if you wanted to. Goes vice versa though, both ways. You can steal theirs, they can steal yours.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've got your buckets, you've got your ads, you've got your targeting. Now optimization. So it's kind of like the last step here. And this is where I was saying that just being persistent, doing it time and time again, rinse and repeat what works, what doesn't, is very important. So if you're spending maybe a few $100s a week, you probably only need to go on your Facebook account every 2 to 3 days to optimize. If you're spending a few $100s a day, you probably want to be in there daily optimizing. But the process is pretty simple. First off, you want to just optimize based on your most important KPI. So usually that is, for an e-commerce store or something, that's usually a purchase. If there's no purchases, then you look at the add to carts. If there's no add to carts, then you look at the cost per click. If it's too close to judge whether cost per click is good or not, then you go to click-through rate. So you work your way down the importance of your KPI to optimize. And you always want to benchmark it against your account or that campaign or an industry average or something like that. So essentially what you're doing is you're cutting off the top stuff that's not converting, and you're just leaving the bottom stuff, and then you're constantly adding to that bottom stuff. So over time, your account just gets better and better and better. The other thing is you want to definitely establish what your optimal CAC or CPA is, cost per acquisition, cost per customer, whatever you want to call it. Same things, but essentially an easy equation to do that is you figure out what your COGS is, how much profit you want to make on that, and then you subtract the revenue you're making for that. So for example, I'm selling a $10 apple. The cost of goods for that apple is $1. I want to make $5 per apple, so I can afford to spend $4 to acquire my customer. So that's kind of like how that equation works. Once you've got that $4, you can then go to all of your campaigns and be like, okay, what's over $4? That stuff's not really where I want to be. I want to be under that $4 range. So cut the stuff above that, keep running and increase the budget of the stuff under that. Persistence. as I was saying, you've just got to do this time and time again. And the kind of the days that you want to look at is the common breakdowns are 7, 14, and 30-day periods. So you want to be looking at all of those because an ad that might have been converting badly over the last 7 days might actually be one of your best ads over the last 30 days. You know, everything in life goes up and down, ads are the same thing. They're not going to convert day in, day out. So don't go and optimize based on like 24-hour periods and stuff because you're just going to drive yourself crazy. So look at like, if you've got a really high budget, media spend, like probably $50,000 a week, you could probably look at the 7-day. But otherwise look at the 14-day and the 30-day and look for trends. So if there's an ad that's doing really, really well on the 30-day, but not so good on the 14 and even worse on the 7, that means that ad is getting worse and worse, so you can then pause that one. Automation rules. So Facebook does have automated rules. They do help a lot in some cases and are a pain in the ass in others. So first off, you want to set automated rules based on increasing or decreasing your budget. So now that we've got CPA, for example, at $4, we might make an automated rule. Anything that is under $3.50, increase my budget by 5%. We might have another rule in there saying decrease our budget, anything that's $4.50. So that way you've got Facebook automating your sort of bidding, or not bidding, but automating your budgets to best optimize it to stay in that hot zone. Because frequency is a huge factor when it comes to your CPA cost. If you're showing your ad too many times, you're wasting impressions. If you're showing your ad too few times, you're missing a lot of opportunities. So you can use Facebook to kind of manage your budget to keep it in that sweet zone. The other thing is you want to set some safety nets. So going back up to our $4 example, I might create an automated rule to say any ad that's at an $8 CPA, I don't want to run that anymore, so automatically pause that. So in case I've accidentally missed that, Facebook's got my back and they're going to pause it anyway. So use a little bit of automated rules for some things. If you find that it's too complicated, you can start off doing it manually, and then you kind of get the rhythm in your account, you'll understand how the account works, and then you can start creating rules to just replace your manual labor. So setting up your dashboard for your optimization stuff, you want to obviously set your own custom dashboard. I hate to say this, but don't use the standard performance conversions one by Facebook. You want to tailor your dashboard to what's important to your business. So for example, these are the ones that I look at for example, AppSumo. These are kind of the metrics that we look at. So we look at most important ones are obviously purchase, add to carts, ROAS. ROAS is return on ad spend. The other things we really like to look at is cost per click, click-through rate, cost per share, which I'll go into in a minute, which is very important, and also the frequency and relevancy score. So essentially, these are the kind of things that we look at daily to make sure that our ads are performing. So the reason cost per share is so important is because if you get a share, I'm paying to serve the person who shared the post. I'm paying for that person to see the ad. I'm not paying if that person shares it and shares it to 100 of their friends. So therefore, I paid for one impression of that guy, but he actually got me 101 impressions. So I just got 100 earned impressions that I didn't have to pay for. So that's why cost per share is super important, because you want to find the content and the ads that people want to share, because that that sort of like earned impression is how you really bring down your cost per acquisition. Because say that one person that shared it doesn't buy, but then 2 of their friends buy it. You've just got 2 conversions for $0.01 or whatever it may be. So you really want to keep an eye on your cost per share and make sure you're creating content that people are sharing, because that's definitely a great way to scale your account for the best CPA possible. We sort of went over the kind of like optimization hierarchy. For example, frequency, this is super general and it will change from business to business. For remarketing, try and keep your frequency like under 10 over a 14-day period. The 8 to 10 range is pretty good. For prospecting, once it goes above 4, you should probably be stopping that campaign, because at that point, pretty much everybody in the audience has seen it 3 or 4 times. If they haven't purchased by then, they probably won't. So it's best to try and either find similar audiences to that to expand into and pause that one, because you'll probably start seeing diminishing results after that.
or your offer sucks and you might go back to the drawing board, right?
Well, if your offer sucks, you probably shouldn't have got to 4 frequency in the first place. But yeah, so yeah, obviously, offer is the biggest thing to change first. So if something's not working, change your value proposition, change your offer. That's going to move the needle the most, and then start doing small tweaks on copy, image, all that sort of stuff. So some general benchmarks that Sprout Social kind of publish. They analyze like tons of Facebook accounts, and they say the average cost per click is $1.75. So just when you're starting out, try and stay below that. Average account click-through rate is 0.9. If you're just starting out, try and stay under that. Relevancy score, you want to be above 6. Stuff under 6, you're going to be paying a lot more to serve that ad, because Facebook loves good content. Good content gets good relevancy scores. Good relevancy scores gets lower CPMs. Cost per 1,000 impressions in CPM.
And the relevancy score is calculated by the click-through rate, the likes and the shares, and basically that's the feedback loop that we talked about that goes back into auction to help you serve better ads. And relevancy score is actually static. So after a certain number of impressions, it shoots out a number. So if you're watching a campaign that's been run for a while, look at positive feedback and negative feedback, and that's going to tell you, how many people are exiting out your ads and how many people are really clicking through it and sharing your ads. And that's going to determine how much less you can pay in auction for more.
Okay, so I just wanted to go over this last little feature that you guys should all be using in your ad accounts. So remember how we were talking about finding that highest converting audience, and we were using Google Analytics data? Now that we've been running ads in Facebook, we can now use Facebook's data, which is one step closer, which is going to be more accurate. So you can actually break down your results by campaign in Facebook by all of these breakdown options. So you can see on the, right image, you can break it down by age, gender, placement. Those are probably the top 3. And as you're spending money on all of your ads, pause or exclude all the stuff that isn't working. So for example, I go into my ad with my apples, and I find that females are converting at $3 and males converting at $6. So I'm going to remove males from my targeting because I want to constantly be driving down. So use these breakdown audiences to find out what sort of segments of your targeting is costing you a lot of money and what segments are the most efficient. And obviously optimize your ad set settings to those.
This is user behavior. So you can see that if you can break it down by impression device, and you can break it down by where they purchase your product, a lot of times you can see someone went on your mobile iOS device to see your impression and went to your desktop to purchase. And how many people are doing that? Because Google can't track that cross-device. Right? So that's something that you can take a look at and kind of see the user behavior. Are people staying on the same device when they purchase, or are they looking at it and going later on? And that's going to affect your measurement and attribution of those purchases in the future. And also another thing that you can do is like Instagram and Audience Network, and the future Messenger, WhatsApp, all the other platforms. You can, if you put them all together in a campaign, which you should segment them out in the beginning, but if you put them in together, Facebook can optimize it for you. And then you can see a breakdown through the breakdown. You can see like how many came from Instagram, how many came from Messenger, and all of the above. So.
And just quickly to add to that, how we said you should probably break them out at the start. So when you're creating, for example, your remarketing, you might want to break out your audiences by desktop, mobile, and say maybe right-hand column. Because the reason you want to break this out is because all those placements have different frequencies. So for example, something in the right-hand column, you can run at twice the frequency as something that's in the news feed, because the right-hand column is less disruptive and people don't see it as often. So you can have a much higher frequency on a right-hand column ad than you could in a news feed ad, for example. But if you've got all of them bundled into one, you're not going to be able to know the frequency for each placement. And the right-hand column might convert at your target CPA up to like a 15 frequency, but your newsfeed ads bomb out on that CPA when they hit like a 5 or a 6. So you want to separate those out so you can optimize that audience, that hot bucket audience, as best as possible.
Newsfeed frequency is capped at 2 per day if you're not a fan of the page, 4 per day if you follow the page. Right-hand side has no frequency cap. So if you're seeing your frequency go up, you can pause the right-hand side, most likely that'll come down because Because if you can pump whatever budget in, that'll spend all the money inside because there's no count there. So.
Okay, so now we've got all of that, we want to scale our account. So the best way to scale your account is to use lookalikes first. 1% of America is about 1.2 million or something. Oh no, maybe even more actually. And so this is a great place to start when you want to scale. So you've got all your like retargeting and stuff set up, you've got a few little interest campaigns going, and you really want to double down on that now. 1% lookalikes is where you want to start, and you can easily set that up by itself if you've got enough data. So you probably want about 50 to 100 conversions a week on the conversion that you're optimizing to. That's right, isn't it? So yeah, you want 50 to 100 conversions on, say, your purchase, if you're optimizing the purchase, or 50 to 100 add to carts a week if you want to optimize to your add to cart. So if you have that amount of volume, you can probably run the lookalike by itself. If you don't have that volume, you can then mix your lookalike audience with something else. So you can add lookalike 1% plus an interest group. So I would add my lookalike plus people who like Granny Smith apples. Or I could say, okay, I know that my website conversion rate is 4% for people buying my apples. I'm going to do lookalike 1%, and I'm going to put a manual bid of 60 cents because that's how much I can pay to then get a good conversion rate and make money on my landing page. The other thing is you probably want to start off on the auto bid, like I said before. That's just going to really simplify it for you, and it's probably going to be, you've got less chance of messing it up on the auto bid because Facebook kind of knows what they're doing. They do it a lot, day in, day out. Whereas the manual bidding is you've got to spend a lot more time increasing, decreasing that manual bid until you find the sweet spot. So again, I recommend going with the auto bid first. I think one last thing I wanted to go over is like naming convention. So this is super important in organizing your account and scaling. So if you don't have super clear and consistent naming convention, you're going to find it very hard to organize your account so that you're running like 20, 30 campaigns, 500 ad sets, 5,000 ads, whatever it may be. You're going to find it very hard to do if you don't have consistent naming convention. Because you're going to have audience overlap because you forgot that you were running that audience in this place, or you forgot you were running it in that place. So this is the structure that I use. I usually use the account, the audience, what target we're going for. I obviously have to choose Australia, and then what lookalike percentage that is. So make sure that you're actually labeling all your audiences correctly, and do it at the start. It's a pain in the ass, and it does take a little while. But when you're scaling to a few $1,000s, $10,000s, $50,000 a day, this is going to save your life.
And I can vouch for that. This is internally, we don't even have something like that. So this is like, Jack has made this, and it made our lives a lot easier because the other side of that is you have to literally click into the edit button in the campaign to see like who you're targeting and try to remember it. And now you can just take a look at the name of the campaign and you know exactly what's in it. So like that saves you hours, right?
What were the 10, 5, 3, 2, 1?
So these are the lookalike audiences. So for example, LAL1 is 1% lookalike of Australia, and the audience is 75% of people who watch videos. And then I've just chosen all of the videos on that page. And so that's defining that audience for me. And so a few tips with scaling. Make sure you start with 1% lookalikes, then go up. Always exclude the previous percentages. So if you're doing a 2% now, you want to exclude your 1% from that 2% campaign. We talked about using lookalikes plus audience insights. That's super powerful if you want to get started at scaling. The other thing is use your Google Analytics to find all the countries or states that are your highest converting. So you might find that Texas has like an 8% conversion rate, and then California has like a 2% conversion rate. So I want to spend my money on Texas because I'm getting way more value from that. Okay, so quick tips, just recapping. You definitely want to start using emojis. Start with your hottest bucket and your best converting audience. Use video and slideshow. That's so much better for engaging someone and capturing them in the 3 seconds you have while they're scrolling. You want to create thumb-stopping ads, like we call them. And you've got like 2 or 3 seconds once the video loads to capture their attention. and that's much easier to do with a video than it is a static image. So if you don't have video content or it's too expensive to create video content, just use slideshows, create a bunch of static images, and you can create slideshows in Facebook. Plus you can actually remarket on slideshows as well because it creates a video pretty much, so you can then do remarketing on that as well. Repetition, so you just got to go in there and you've got to do the work. You just got to go in, optimize every day, use those breakdowns, label those audiences, because all this sort of small 1%ers will add up to a much larger ROI for you and will determine whether Facebook works for you or not. Leverage social proof as well. So this is actually a really important one. I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with kind of like the back end of Facebook, but you can use these things called dark posts, which essentially is you just using the post ID in multiple ad sets. So for example, say I'm using one ad and I'm targeting people who like Granny Smith apples, and that ad has a ton of engagement on it, a ton of comments, a ton of shares, all that sort of stuff. And I want to start a new ad set. I don't know any names of apple types, but say it's like apple number 2. And say I want to use that same ad. I go to that ad, look at the post, get the post ID, which is in the URL. It's the last like 14 digits, I think, on the end of the URL, and use that post ID when you can choose use existing post. And therefore, when I launch that new ad set into the Apple II audience, I've already got a ton of social validation on my ad, and that's going to skyrocket me in terms of what relevancy score I'm going to get.
At that point, you can't edit anything. It has
You
to
can't
stay.
edit anything though yet. So yeah, make sure you get it right the first time.
What can't you edit?
So once you turn it into a dark post, you
Dark?
can't, yeah, so you know how I was talking about like the post, yeah, dark post is probably it.
You can't edit like the text or
Yeah.
the image. It has to be the exact ad you created previously.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
So you're just targeting a different audience.
With
Yeah.
different audience.
Got it, okay.
So
Same
the-
not different audience.
So the rule is once you spend advertising money on any post, you no longer can edit the post.
Right.
Yeah. And then,
Will both of those ads run at the same time then?
Yeah.
and then we'll all point to that post, which will increase your social proof because people will like and comment on the same post or share on the same post, and then it's like you're just aggregating all the numbers.
And there's no overlap because you said you subtract your 1% from your 2% audience or 2%
Exactly.
from your
Correct. Okay, and super important guys, work out your LTV, work out your average order value, work out your CPA. Those things are super important when it comes to obviously figuring out what you're optimizing to and how much you can pay for a customer, how much you can't. And so that will definitely help you scale your account and obviously keep it profitable. So over the next 48 hours, I want you guys to go do some stuff. You have a Facebook account, you're running ads. I want you to start using that breakdown feature in the top right. Even if at the end of this session, if you can grab your laptops and have a look at your information of your overall account breakdown, you'll see some super interesting stuff about who's actually converting. Optimize your ads, then your ad sets. Go in that order so that you're constantly starting from the bottom and working up. So yeah, if you're going in and optimizing, start doing that. Look at your audience insights for your page. Create a Google Sheet or a PDF, whatever you want to do. Jot all of that information down of your top gender, age, location, interests, all that stuff. Put it in a shareable document. Share it with all your entire team so everybody knows exactly who your top converting customer is, so that the copywriter knows who they're writing copy for, so that the ad buyer knows who they're targeting, so the website designer knows who they're designing for. To create a central location so that everybody can see who your perfect personas are. Start talking to your customers. Just email some of them. Even if you're, for example, someone's left your subscription service, send out an automated email and ask them like, oh hey, sorry to see you go. Why'd you leave? We love feedback. Those sort of things will really improve your advertising, especially your Facebook, because they might be like, pricing was too high. So you need to just tweak your offer on the front end to maybe give the first 3 months at a lower rate and then charge a higher rate for the following months or something. Or you change the introductory offer. Start using those dark posts that we talk about. They're super important. And start working down from hot to cold audiences. So if you can, tonight, tomorrow, start off by just creating a remarketing campaign, because that's going to be your best place to start. And use some of these tips, get the slides, pretty much use the basics, and you should be able to make your first few dollars on Facebook.
Yeah.
Do you have any opinions, good, bad, or otherwise, by using like SaaS products such as like AdExpresso or something like that?
Yeah, so AdExpresso is probably one of the better ones. And it's great for split testing. It will kind of like take a lot of the grunt work out of it. We don't use any tools because it's just Facebook pretty much gobbles up any good tool that is created. So we don't really use extra tools, but you definitely can. And if you're just getting started, AdExpresso is a great way to get an introductory and take out a lot of the heavy lifting because it's very templatized. The only downside to AdExpresso is, for example, you can't use that dark post feature. So there's certain things that you can use with those products that make it great, like the split testing, but then there's other things you have to sacrifice, like using dark posts that you can't do from that sort of thing. So the best way to do it when you're using something like that is use those tools to test and find your best converting ad, and then take that best converting ad and put it throughout all of your core campaigns, which is like your remarketing, your lookalikes, and whatever. Anyway, you want to reuse that one. But yeah, definitely you can use them to streamline a lot of processes. And I would start with AdExpresso first, probably.
With
That's
that, is there any plugin that you all think works best in like the in kind of the context of using like WordPress or something? I know like AdExpresso has a WordPress plugin. There's just a bunch, you know. I'm always.
Yeah. Theirs is the best one, I think,
Okay.
for WooCommerce. WordPress, sorry. And I would say for Shopify, they already have an integrated section for your pixel. So all you have to do is grab your pixel ID and chuck it under your preferences tab. Magento, I try and stay well away from that thing. And yeah, I'm sure there's BigCommerce has plugins as well. But yeah, usually it's Shopify and WordPress I see the most kind of like accounts and websites in. And I would go with the AdExpresso Pixel plugin.
I noticed you guys are using some kind of cool strategies on the carousel ads, where it almost looks like it's one picture going on the other. But I also saw in your videos a lot of times it almost looks like an image, but it has components that are moving. Are you guys finding that that's converting well?
Yeah. So basically, like you turn any static image, the same image, into something moving in a video or slideshow. We're seeing better performance from that. So it's like we talked about, if you don't have resources to create an original video or something, you can easily just take a static image and create some sort of animation on top of it. And some of these apps would actually help you do that for free.
And that's better than like a face on video and that kind of stuff you're finding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like you recording yourself talking.
It's better than Noah's face, yeah.
We've tried that too.
Is there a range you want to stay in with like an ad daily budget? We found like success at say like $10 a day, and then we cranked it up to $50 a day, and so the ad kind of bought out despite having a really large audience.
Yeah, so that will probably be that $10 is being optimized a lot better than your $50. So what that's saying is you just need to get a little bit more targeted with your audience, so that $50 is still going to a super targeted audience, because Facebook is always trying to optimize automatically your ad to go to the best performing person. So they kind of like break up their users, people who engage, people who click, people who convert. So you're spending that $10, Facebook's serving all the converters and who are most likely to convert for your ad, and then say $50, they can't find them anymore. It gets a little bit more diluted. So try and start with a smaller audience. Maybe use that same ad, but just break down that larger audience into like 4 or 5 different ones and have a different limiting factor. So for example, you could have a interest group that's making those audiences a little bit narrower. Or you could have, male, female, or you could have different ages. So just try and hone in on a smaller audience, and you'll find that you can get a much better, you can start scaling that out a little bit more.
What size audience do you typically aim for?
Yeah, so if you're just starting out, try and aim for like 50 to 100,000. Kind of go a little bit smaller when you're really honing in on a really small targeted audience. So make sure that your ads are aligned to that. As you're really scaling and starting to get a little bit bigger, you want to look at around that million mark, so that you've got actually enough audience to go and serve your ad to. And by that point, your pixels have enough data, so they're finding the right people. You validated your ads, so it's doing a lot better job at finding the people in that audience, that million size audience. But when you're starting out, those smaller audiences, you'll probably see better results.
So why not, like, for someone who, let's say, doesn't have, like say I don't have Cloud, I don't have Warm, I have to start Code, right? I've got money to do it.
Yep.
So what, if I was to say, like, why not just go straight for a CPA campaign to large crowd, let Facebook do all it's doing to gather data on the conversions that may be occurring even though they may be at a higher rate.
Mhm.
But if I can let that happen, run for a while, could I just do that? Like instead of having to worry about like, start with the big audience or even a small one and then try to get granular with your target, why not just focus from the get-go on CPA for purchase and let Facebook do all the work?
Well, if you've got enough data, you can do that. So if you've got that 50 to 100 conversions a week, you can start doing that. But also you're guessing at that point. Like you're not slowly finding the right audience, or you're not finding the perfect audience as you scale up. You're saying like Facebook, go and find everything. And so they have to serve ads to a ton of people before they find out the people that are actually converting.
Sure.
If you can narrow that audience and be like, I know these people already convert, you're gonna get a much better CPA. So it depends what your threshold is. If you're like, okay, I'm happy to pay $150, Facebook go nuts, that's fine. But if you're like, okay, I actually only want to spend $50, you need a little bit more granular. So
You're talking for CPA, right? Like if
Yeah.
Okay. So if it was way higher than that, okay, yeah.
So it's kind of like your
I think
threshold.
it makes sense to test it, just because like, if your CPA could be higher than $200-300 for CPA, then.
Oh, always test everything. Anytime you've got an idea, test it.
I just feel like if I could pay Facebook to find those customers over time, I'd let them do it.
Right. No, so the answer is both, right? So
Okay.
you want to go into the narrow things and obviously trying to find your pockets of audience, and then as you scale, you have to do that anyways.
Right. So it's really mainly for efficiency, or is really why you kind of want to do it for both angles.
Right. Right. And, you know, if you get lucky that Facebook was able to find the audience that you were looking for, you know, but then you still don't really know who they are, and then but like you got lucky and you can keep running that app.
Okay,
Don't
yeah.
stop.
Yes.
But you know, but like most people won't. So like if most people, like Jack said, like Facebook's gonna look for everywhere that like what's it, 50 million or like 10 million people, and then like it probably won't find the audience that you're looking for. So you know the answer is both, and you should test that out and see if Facebook can help you out. But you know, nothing replaces hard work, right?
Yeah, I just always feel like if I was to offer such a specific thing, a specific solution to a specific problem, like I don't know, like how to stop picking your nose or something, and I wanted to spend based on the product we're selling to help someone stop doing that, that it would just make sense, like because it's so specific, like it narrows down to the ad.
Yeah.
The ad is very specific, right? And you actually got an offer, or whatever it is. I'm assuming that starting with CPA off the bat, at whatever conversion number.
That'll probably go viral
I
anyway.
know. You know what I'm saying? I'm just so it's from both angles, so that works. Yeah.
But the other thing is like, what's your threshold? It's like if you've got a huge marketing budget and you're like, yeah, Facebook do all the work, and you're like, I'm willing to spend $10,000 before I get my first conversion just so Facebook can figure it out. And that's fine. You can definitely do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially if the product is a $10,000 coaching tool or something.
But you want to make sure they find it after that 10,000. Otherwise, where do you stop?
Right.
Yep.
You mentioned rebrandly and driving links to Amazon in that context. What's the official policy on redirects? Seems like kind of a gray area.
Your question. I do the gray area stuff.
Sorry. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier about rebrandly and driving links to Amazon, for instance.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if rebrandly iframes the other page or if it just drops a pixel and redirects.
Yeah.
But what's the official policy on redirects in general, like Bitly or Snipply or rebrandly?
No, that's a good question. So it needs to be consistent with what you're advertising. That's the stance that Facebook's taking. So like for example, if you're advertising a dog and you're redirecting to your cat, then you know that you're gonna have trouble, right? That's the easiest example. So it's
Like
like
your relevance score drops.
How do they determine that? Do the spiders go visit the link and then?
well, you have pixel on it.
But do they follow the link though?
Well, the specifics will be like there's an algorithm that's doing it, and there's manual, you know, people within Facebook that's like there's a team that's handling that. But yeah, they can detect that. So like if your content on a redirect afterwards is not what you were advertising for, then it's it's technically like almost illegal.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. Like I remember one of my clients was we used to do sex toys. Very gray area. and so we tried Facebook ads, and we could run traffic to pages that didn't feature the product and maybe featured a customer story. But we couldn't run people to a page that featured the product because Facebook was looking at what was on the landing pages, and they were determining, okay, this is not allowed, this is allowed. They got shut down like within a few months there.
So, just to add to that, I mean, so that idea of kind of running ads to cold and warm and hot, so forth. Have you ever had any experience of running ads to other blog posts that you don't own, and using a retargeting pixel strategy?
Yep.
Is that allowed? I mean, can I run, can I just advertise to a link that I don't even own? It's on a different page, but use Snipply or something like that? Is that kosher?
Yeah, as long as like what you're advertising for, like the creative, the photo, the video that you're running is consistent with where people land, and you're clearly telling them they're landing on this blog about your product they're on, right? So it's a consistent message.
That's a good way to segment too. Like if you send them to nothing but SEO articles and you're using Snipply, then you know it's an audience that has an affinity to SEO topics.
I've always been nervous about running ads.
I know, yeah, you can totally do it.
Pop up. You
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we've just been told to wrap it up. So this has been on Facebook Live. So if you've got follow-up questions, chuck them in the comments on Facebook Live, and we'll jump in there and answer them all. 101, get engagement on your post.